Hello, I'm Chance McAllister, and I was tasked with arguing the pro side of abolishing the minimum wage. And there's just a couple things before I want to get started. I want to just point out there are going to be a couple reoccurring themes throughout my little presentation here, and that is the desired outcome of implementing a minimum wage, and then the plausible results of or reactions to said minimum wage, either implementing one or raising pre-existing minimum wage. And so I think the first point we can all pretty much agree that the the reason for the existence of a minimum wage is to ensure the health and well-being of the working class, and everyone that falls underneath or within those borders of where the minimum wage is applied. I would argue that implementing these minimum wages accomplishes the opposite of that. So, just want to give an example here. So, if we have a minimum wage and we put it in place, or if we increased a pre-existing, we would have two parties that would have initial effects, and those parties being the employee and the company, of course. And I want to first talk about the company side of this, because I think in order to truly understand the employee side, we must talk about the company first. And what's interesting is that all these results that we see kind of end up negative or neutral for the company, which ultimately ends negative or neutral for the employee. First of which being layoffs. So what we see is when a company is faced with a new minimum wage, they have to increase the amount that they pay to their lowest earning employees, and that cost increases their wages expense. So they have to go looking for money in the company elsewhere in order to continue operations. And so one place that they try looking for this, or that they could look for this, is firing the people that they feel aren't contributing worth the an amount worth the minimum wage, and that of course is what we call layoffs, and that just increases unemployment, thus not ensuring the health or increasing the welfare of the working class. So it doesn't accomplish it there. The second one we could look at is outsourcing, and what this essentially is companies will then look for employees that lie within borders that don't have the minimum wage, and thus this will increase the unemployment within those boundaries that have the minimum wage in the areas where they were trying to increase the welfare and health, and increase the or ensure the health and increase the welfare of the employees. The third of which we can look at is a response to this increase of expenses is a raise in prices of goods or services. So when we see a raise in price of goods or services, this oftentimes results in customers buying less product or service. And what this does in turn would provide an excess inventory of goods or services, of course. And then the company would look at that and say, hey, we have an excess amount. Why is this so? And do we actually need this many employees to manage this amount of product? And not only that, but if we're not selling as much, how can we maximize the profit that we gain from the company? And so that would result in downsizing and layoffs, which ultimately increases unemployment and doesn't increase the welfare or ensure the health of the employees. The last of which underneath the company that I want to talk about is taking away from benefits to add to the new wages expense. And what this essentially does is it's just a net neutral. It really doesn't accomplish the goal of implementing a minimum wage. It really just is neutral. It's neither good nor bad, because we see, of course, the wages increase for employees, but we also see their benefits get cut down so that they can afford being paid more. And so that's it when it comes to, of course, there are more examples for the company, but I'm going to go on to employees now. And employees, while we see the first initial, the initial effect is revenues increase for the employees, which is fantastic. That's what we want to happen. The idea is now that they can go and spend that money in the market elsewhere and increase cash flow. The only problem with this is that many of the other companies around that they would spend their money at have most likely already tried and reacted to the minimum wage and increased their prices. And when the prices increase, that means that no matter how much, the amount of money that they're receiving more is most likely equal to the increase in which the goods or services have been increased. And so we see here also a net neutral. So ultimately, the results of the actions of implementing a minimum wage ultimately come to a net neutral or a negative. And so I rest my case that the results of implementing a minimum wage would actually accomplish ensuring the health and well-being of the working class.